So it's time for the first ever X-Men review on this channel, and we're going to start it out with Phoenix. So I had a crazy week last week playing a ton of Marvel Champions. I played through the 4 new heroes that we got in all of the aspects, as well as the Mutant Genesis campaign, and wanted to break it down, do these hero spotlight videos to talk about each one of these new heroes, talk about kind of some of the cards that I like to use, how they function, rank their aspects in terms of which, how good they are in each one of them, and then put them into our overall ranking of Marvel Champions heroes. So let's talk about Jean Grey. So Jean Grey on her alter ego size has a 3 recovery and a 6 hand size, so very standard stuff over here. She does have an ability that says that whenever you make a basic recovery, you get a power counter on Phoenix Force, which is pretty useful in hero form. So let's talk about hero form. On her hero side, she has a 3 thwart, which is crazy. An absolute crazy stat line. So 3 thwart, 1 attack, 2 defense, 5 hand size. She has her Psionic Bond ability that says once per round, you can use a power counter on Phoenix Force as a wild resource. These are the counters that you're putting on when you're making a basic recovery. So Phoenix Force starts in the game with 4 counters. It's a permanent upgrade. It's a double-sided permanent upgrade that starts with 4 counters. Once you reach 0, it has a forced response to flip over, and you go from restrained to unleashed. Now, this has a couple of benefits and some downsides, but mainly benefits. So right off the bat, she gets -2 thwart and +2 attack. So her stat line kind of flip-flops, making her a 1-3-2. Just right there, you can see the flexibility that Phoenix already kind of has built right there on her card. Because when you need to thwart, you have a 3 thwart. Once you go restrained, once you're making a push, once you need to take out a big minion or the villain, you can switch over to having a 3 attack fairly easily. Some of the other benefits come in her kit card. She has a lot of cards that have an effect, and then an additional benefit if you are in Unleashed form. So take Psychic Blast, for example. This is a 2 cost for 4 damage to the villain, which is really in a hero form not kind of the math that we're looking for. But if you're in Unleashed form, you also deal 4 damage to all minions engaged with you. So she can clear minions out really easily once she is Unleashed, which is something that she does struggle with while she's restrained. Another example of this would be Telekinetic Attack. So this is a 3 for 7 damage, which is right around where we would think. I always kind of picture a swinging web kick in my head, which is a 3 for 8. And so this is right there on the nose, but if you are Unleashed, you get +2 damage, so it's a 3 for 9 with overkill. So got a nasty minion, or you need to take out a minion and still don't want all of that damage to go to waste. When you're Unleashed, you get overkill there. Just absolutely incredible benefits once you do go into Unleashed, and she gets insanely strong. However, there is a downside. If you are in Unleashed form and you draw her obligation, you summon Dark Phoenix, which is her nemesis. So there are 2 ways in a standard game where Dark Phoenix or her Nemesis set can enter play. It can be Shadows of the Past, or if you're on Unleashed form, if you draw your obligation. And I think that this is a really interesting way to balance her, because Dark Phoenix is by far the toughest minion nemesis that we've seen. So she has 12 health, she is steady, she is tough, she's villainous, and right there, she is basically another villain. She also brings with her a new side scheme, or the Nemesis side scheme, which gets put in via whenever she enters play. This is actually a permanent side scheme. It's called Consume the World, and it starts out with 6 threat. Whenever Dark Phoenix does scheme, threat gets added on to Consume the World, and if you ever reach 12, you immediately lose the game. So this brings in a whole new loss condition, which is, I think, so very cool. It's a new design space that we haven't really seen before. We've seen alternate loss conditions before, but we haven't seen a hero bring a loss condition to the table as a balancing mechanism for how strong they can be. And I am all for this type of design space. I think, with huge power spikes, huge, incredibly strong heroes, to have some pretty significant downsides is a space I would like to see explored a little bit more. Love the side scheme. It creates like a risk-reward decision on whenever you want to flip into Unleashed, because you do get significantly more powerful. So you're sitting there constantly monitoring the encounter deck. Are you going to go Unleashed if you haven't seen Shadows or her obligation, that's a really risky decision. Or once you've seen them both pass, can you flip into Unleashed, and then whenever you shuffle your deck, you can, if you ever build back up to 4 counters, you flip back into Restrained. So there's a little bit of fun manipulation that you can do around if you are in Unleashed or Restrained based on what you have already seen in the encounter deck. The other reason that Phoenix I think is so strong are the new Psionic cards. So these are similar to the Mystic traded cards, play only if your hero has the Mystic trait. So like Spiritual Meditation, that were very, very strong. Psionic cards are following the same formula. You can play these cards if you only have the Psionic trait, which right now is just Phoenix, and they are pretty crazy. I'm going to outline those once we get into talking about each individual aspect, but that does have a really significant push for why she is so good. But before we talk about the aspects, let's talk about some of the basic cards. So there are a lot of new basic cards we got with these new heroes like X-Jet, Utopia, X-Mansion, Danger Room, a lot of these cards that are just really good for all of the X-Men. I'm not going to mention those individually in any of these reviews. Just know that those are cards that I would build around pretty heavily, but I would sound kind of like a broken record after we get through there. The one that I will talk about that is the X-Men kind of new basic kit, specifically for Phoenix, is Cerebro, because she is psionic. So Cerebro allows you in Alter Ego to search the top 5 cards of your deck for an X-Men ally and add it to your hand. If you control a psionic character, which in this case would be Jean Grey, you can search your entire deck. So she gets the benefit of Cerebro's full Unleashed power right off the bat. That allows you to build into a really strong ally-focused build, and Cerebro in her deck is excellent because you will always hit. The next basic card I want to talk about is Team Training. So 9 out of the cards in her kit, 9 out of the 15 cards in her kit, Team Training can trigger off of. That's going to either be X-Men traded or Psionic traded. She has a lot of Psionic traded cards as well. Also, if you are running a heavy ally scenario because you're utilizing Cerebro to its full potential, Team Training is going to be able to put those cards into play for one less cost as well, because those are you're pulling X-Men. 9 just in her base kit. So 25% of her cards can be played with Team Training, and then if you start adding in more, Cerebro itself is an X-Men traded card. You start adding in and building in more cards that Team Training can trigger. Really the question is how many are you going to run? I highly recommend 1 based on your build. 2, 3 seems a little excessive to me, but I could see it work really well. Let's dive into ranking the aspects from what is she least good in to best in, and then once I get to my favorite aspect that I like playing with her, I will call that out. So diving in, 4th place, leadership. So X-Men have been struggling with leadership because Cyclops, the leadership precon, came with no leadership allies outside of 1, which is Beast. And this is because Cyclops has the ability to include any X-Men ally in his deck. So they were able to flush out a lot of the other aspects with a leadership precon, but not necessarily give a lot of love to the leadership allies. So I assume that that's going to grow and flourish once we start getting more heroes coming out, but right now leadership and the X-Men are just not jiving well together. So a couple other downsides: if you are running the Cerebro strategy, it's hindering that you can only pull Beast and the basic allies, and so it's really narrowing your focus, and then so it's just, it doesn't add as much as I want it to, but I'm sure that we will get a little bit more support in the blue aspect as we start seeing more heroes. The Psionic card is pretty good though. The Psionic card is called Psychic Kicker. It's a 0 cost event that readies an ally. Then they get +2 thwart and +2 attack for its next basic activation this phase. So it's like a get ready +2 thwart removal. So really good off the bat stats. And once we get some more allies, I'm really excited to revisit Jean in blue. Actually, all of the X-Men in blue, to see how, with a wider range of allies that can be included in the deck, I'm excited to see how it goes. Moving into 3rd place is Protection. So this also doesn't really have much going for her. You don't really want to defend because you're giving up either a 3 thwart or a 3 attack, which is just a really high opportunity cost to defend. So if you're running protection, you want to be running a no defend protection, and her strengths just don't really work as well as they do with some of the other aspects. So protection is kind of right there with leadership, honestly. Like, you do have a little bit more access to some more X-Men cards, which are great, but it's right there. Protection with her just doesn't work out as well as I wanted it to. The Psionic card in green, it is called Psychic Misdirection. So this is a 2-cost event, and it says when an enemy attacks, you get to choose another enemy, and the damage is dealt to them instead. So this is really good, especially in a multiplayer game. If you pull like a villain, have it take out a big minion, or something like that, you're healing yourself by not taking the damage, as well as dealing damage somewhere else. In a solo game, I found it kind of harder to pull off because and this may just be my playstyle, I like to keep my board fairly clean of minions. And so whenever I had that card in my hand, I very rarely had 2 targets, so I could redirect the attack to the minion or vice versa. So I think it's going to be really cool in a multiplayer game, but in solo, it didn't work out super well, in my opinion. That brings us to our third best aspect, which this is actually my favorite to play with her, and that's Justice. So it works pretty well via 2 fronts, and so we can talk about going the one way or another build, especially in solo. 3 thwart and restrained easily makes it, you can easily take care of pretty much any side scheme in the game that you're going to be pulling with one way or another. A lot of them have 3 threat, so you can just pull. And if you need more, Heroic Intuition puts her at a 4 threat, and that's going to take care of most of the solo side schemes that you're going to see. Really strong one way or another build. On the other side of the coin, the other strategy that works really well with Phoenix and Justice is kind of the keeping threat at 0 and using cards like Pivotal Moment or any of her kit cards to deal the damage. So she can sit out there, use the Justice, use the yellow cards, mitigate all of the threat, and then her kit cards are so strong with damage that you don't have to build any extra in there. If you are, Pivotal Moment is an excellent choice for you. It's a 2 for 5 if there's no threat on the main scheme. Yeah, we'll take that any day. And then I said 2, maybe this is a 3-sided coin somehow, but the last reason Justice works so well with her is once you flip into Unleashed, Justice can really help shore up that one threat that she has, and especially if you are not right about to cross the finish line. So you will still need some threat mitigation, and with a 1 thwart hero, which we know is not great at that, Justice can shore up that weakness once you do go into Unleashed. So Justice with her is so much fun because it is so flexible and it provides so many ways to play into and shore up her weaknesses based on the game state and where you are. The Psionic card for Justice is also really good. It's called Psychic Manipulation, and I did not think this was good when I first saw it because I didn't realize you could play it in Alter Ego. All you need is the Psionic trait and you can play this card. So it's a 3-cost event, which is pretty steep, but it says when the villain schemes, it removes threat instead of adding it. So this card works so well because she does want to be an Alter Ego to utilize Cerebro, pulling her allies, Danger Room. A lot of the X-Men do want to be and like to be an Alter Ego, and so having this card that's going to prevent and mitigate threat all at the same time is really strong. And also in multiplayer, this card works phenomenally in multiplayer as well. So really good Psionic card, meaning that Justice is second place. That brings us to our first place aspect, which is aggression. And I think this edges out Justice just a little bit because she has 3 thwart. So her kit and her basic activation can manage thwart very well, and then you can time the Unleash to go for the kill. So she'll sit there, she can manage the board state, make sure everything is fine, get her counters ready, be playing some of these cards to deal 7-4 damage depending on which ones you're playing, and then go Unleashed, don't worry about threat, and rush the villain. The strategy works so well. Also, red gives her access to, I think, the one of the best, if not the best, X-Men ally in the game, which is Wolverine, with 3 attack, piercing. Then if you throw an attack training, he goes to 4 attack with piercing, and he is so good. He heals 1 every single turn, so he can stay out on the table every single turn. And if you combine this with like Team Strike, you don't have to be taking the consequentials, and you're unleashed. That's 6 damage for 1 cost, 2 activations. Like you're not getting additional damage, but you can spread it out, and then it's saving the consequentials. Aggression, I never felt in Standard that I was ever really struggling with aggression. I always thought that I had the game absolutely under control. There wasn't really any issues, because if there was a lot of threat, her 3 thwart takes care of it. And then whenever I got ready, it was kind of a flip to unleash, win the next turn. It was pretty cool. It was pretty cool. Now that description kind of sounds like aggression and justice may be right at the same playing field, but kind of what really does push it over the edge is the psionic card. So this is probably the best one. It's called Psychic Assault. It's a 2-cost event that deals 3 damage and confuses the enemy. So like I was saying earlier, she wants to be an alter ego to activate her alter ego kit. Confuse in red is something we have not seen before, and this just opens up so many possibilities. So if you are already unleashed, then you can flip down after playing this card without worrying about not having enough threat mitigation with that 1 thwart once you do flip back up. So Psychic Assault, I run 3x in every single one of my red Jean decks, and like 2 for 3 damage is not horrendous. It's definitely on the lower side, but giving us access to Confuse, I'll take that any day. So this was pretty similar to, I'm going to put up the community rankings here. This is pretty similar to the community rankings, but they had justice and aggression flipped. Let's dive into the overall ranking. I'm going to throw up the current rankings here, and we're going to slide her right between Miss Marvel and Nova at an A tier. So she's a really strong hero in 2 of the 4 aspects with a nasty nemesis. It opens up psionic cards, which makes play so strong. Those cards are incredibly good, and I think once we start getting a little bit more support in blue, she's going to be very good there, which could pump her up even more. But overall, just a very solid hero. Really cool balancing fact that her nemesis is just way more strong than anything that we've seen, which is what they are using to balance it. There's multiple ways to pull in her nemesis throughout the game, and I'm just really excited with this type of design, and I'm really excited to see more of this in the future. So thank you for hanging out. If you want to, you can vote on who I play next in our hero spotlight. So we finished out the 4 X-Men. We got some time before we get our new X-Men here in about a month, and so if you want, you can use the link below, vote on who I play next, and we'll get those up here in the next couple weeks. Thanks for hanging out. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel. It does go so very far in helping support me and the content that I put out, so I very much appreciate it. Thank you all so very much. See you around. Have some fun with X-Men. Peace.